And we'll welcome everyone in. Welcome, everyone. I know everybody's still getting logged on and getting connected to sound. So glad that you could join us today. My name is Susan Arnold Christian, and I work full-time for SHPE. I work out of Kansas City, Missouri, and I'm just happy to be here and happy to have this conversation today. This is actually our third event in this series. Um, and just talking about mental health and the concept of sana sana. And so grateful that you all could join in today to join in this discussion. This event and the other events are in partnership with Honeywell, our corporate sponsor for these events, and many projects and partnerships within SHIP. And just want to call them out and say I'm so grateful and thankful. We have known for a number of years that, particularly with our SHIP membership, when we do our needs assessment, that this concept and topic of mental health and how we support ourselves and support each other as a SHIP familia is one of the highest ranking needs on our member needs assessment. And so grateful for Honeywell to invest in this topic to kind of help us think this through. I just want to go over a couple of quick housekeeping things, and then we're going to dive in and get started. One of the things I want to share with you is that we are recording this just from the standpoint of being able to share with people who weren't able to attend. We had about 60 or so people RSVP for this event, and there are some people who've been participating in the whole series, so we'll be sharing that out. When we go into breakout room discussions, if we get to that part today, we won't record the breakout sessions and your conversations, but just the content that's being shared overall. So I just want to make you aware of that. And then I also just want to encourage you. I don't know about you all, but I sit in on a lot of Zoom meetings and Zoom events all day long. And I guarantee you the most fun events and impactful events are when people can engage. So if you're at a place that you cannot share your camera and you can't engage, that's okay. There's still other ways that you can engage. Definitely use the chat. You can use the reaction tools, ask questions, and engage as much as you can, as much as you feel comfortable. But definitely engage today and share your camera if you can. It just really helps the presenters too to see some facial expressions with smiles or nods. And again, feel free. We want to get your questions answered today too. So any questions or thoughts or comments that you have, I love it when the speakers are talking and something might resonate with you, right? Or you might have hey, I've thought about it this way. Throwing that in the chat and having a dialogue with the other participants will help you get the most out of this event. So I just wanted to give you that challenge and encouragement to engage as much as you can today. And just welcome you all. If you want to do a quick intro in the chat and throw where are you joining in from today? Are you a SHIP student? Are you an undergrad student? Are you a graduate student? Are you a professional member? Just do some introductions and start to get to know each other in the chat. So please take a moment and just introduce yourself in the chat and start connecting with each other. I've also seen people throw in their LinkedIn if people want to connect and just network with each other to use this opportunity to just expand your SHIP familia. So thank you again, and thank you again to Honeywell for supporting this. We're so grateful of your investment in our members in this way. And I'm going to pass the baton on over to Gustavo and Sarah, our speakers for today.
Thanks, Susan. So I'm going to share my screen for the presentation. As we go along, as Susan said, we'd love for you to interact. If you're unable to have your video unmuted, we'd love to see some reactions with Zoom or in the chat. Let us know how you're doing or anything like that. But my name is Gustavo Molinar. I use pronouns he, him. And I'm joining you from Houston, Texas. So excited to be here. We're getting some sun between the clouds here. And it's already in the 80s and 90s. So I'm ready for the summer and for pool weather. So thanks for being here. We've been talking, right, since this is a series, we've been talking about what mental health may look like within the Latino Hispanic community. And we know that, the series is named Sana Sana, and we know that, the rest of that is Sana Sana Rana, right? And kind of what that may mean, right? Taking care of ourselves. But we wanted to talk about when that may not be enough. So that's the topic of today. These are some reminders that Susan already went over, but again, we'll be recording, but not the breakout groups. Make sure to interact in however you're able to do, and then to respect everyone, right? That everyone has different experiences, and so they may vary. And so this is Rosetta.
Hello, everyone. Just to give a quick introduction, my name is Sarah Diaz. I am a licensed clinical social worker, and I'm joining from Miami, Florida. So I love seeing in the chat, we are joining from all over. So that's so cool. And also, before we get started, I know I'm a day early, but happy Mental Health Awareness Month, which is going to be all of May. And it's really important for you guys to be here to kind of kick off the conversation for May. So we're so excited to be able to do that for you guys. And we're just going to start with giving you guys kind of like an overall agenda of what we're going to be discussing. If you've been to previous presentations, you'll know that we've talked a lot about the stigma that has to do with, or that is found within our culture in the Latinx community. We can't have a conversation about mental health without talking about that. After that, we're going to get into what are the barriers, right? Or what are the limitations that sometimes our culture brings when it comes to getting mental health support. Then we're going to talk about the strengths. We're going to talk about specifically why it's important for students to take care of their mental health. But I think this advice and this information is for everyone. As Gustavo mentioned, we're going to talk about when sana sana is not enough. That is a really big cultural thing that we might have heard as kids, but there comes a point where we may need a little bit more support than just that. So we're going to get into that, and then we're going to wrap up with some resources and other ideas for supports for you all. So with that, let's do a quick check-in. So we're going to do sort of a word cloud. And if you guys can scan the QR code and we can see your words, the question is, how are you all doing? And you can say in one word, how are you feeling right now?
You can
We know,
also you
I'm
can
sorry.
also click into the link in the chat, or you can scan the QR code or go to menti.com and use that code at the top.
Thank you, Gustavo. So yeah, we wanted to have a point of check-in before our session because we know that with current events, there's a lot going on that's affecting our community specifically and can have a pretty big impact on our mental health. So we want to do a quick check-in just to see where you guys are right now. Okay, so we see a little bit of a mixture of emotions, or a little some stress, nervousness, but also some good, hopeful, frustrated, and overwhelmed. Yeah, I think this pretty much is. I started to feel like, I don't know if you guys have seen the movie Inside Out that Disney has put together with all the emotions. I've started to think that this time is the time that we felt all of the emotions that are in that movie. So this is pretty accurate. Confused, some excited, productive, doubtful. It's a little bit of a mixture of things. We hope, right, that with this presentation, this is not to overwhelm you more or to provide more stress, but this is to reiterate why it's so important for us to take care of our mental health. How can you find or go to a place of peace and maybe a little bit more on the hopeful side and not as much of the overwhelm? Because it's very easy, especially nowadays, to just sit with the overwhelm, and we want to make sure that you guys are taking care of your mental health. So thank you for sharing that. Thank you, Gustavo, for doing the QR code. We'll have some other times for you guys to share, but we just wanted to do a quick check-in first. And now we're going to go into talking about the stigma. So if you've joined us before, we have talked about this, but we just wanted to mention it again because, as I mentioned, you can't talk about mental health without addressing the stigma first. So you all may have heard these phrases, and I will translate them into English. this is probably what we heard from our families or from our culture growing up when it comes to mental health. And most of that looks like ¿qué van a decir la gente? Or what are people going to say? Terapias para los locos, or therapy is only for crazy people. Son los nervios, which is, it's just the nerves. Or Dios es el único que te puede ayudar. Or God is the only one that can help you. So actually, if any of this resonates with you all, please put it in the chat. I think part of being in community is seeing the representation and seeing that we're not alone in the things that we experience. So these messages, right, are form the stigma that's behind mental health within our community. And that's why it's hard for a lot of us to get that support. So we wanted to make sure that we talked about the stigma before we got started. But let's shift gears now and talk about how the stigma comes into play specifically for us as part of the Latinx community. So this is going to be another opportunity for you guys to share how this resonates for you. So tell us, and you can use the link that Gustavo put. Is it a different code, Gustavo, than last time? Okay, perfect. So it's in the chat. Tell us, what are some barriers or limitations that you know about that come into play when it comes to mental health, specifically for being a part of the Latinx community or Latinx community? What are some barriers, or what have kept you in the past from getting the mental health support? Financial barriers, it's a huge one. Yeah, finances, no money for therapy. There is an issue with accessibility and affordability when it comes to therapeutic services. Cost, being heard, and location, yes. Terminology is not widely known both in English and Spanish. Yes, I will tell you, as a therapist myself, as a bilingual therapist, there are sometimes things that do not translate. So that is a huge, language barriers overall are a huge concern. We don't talk about stuff outside the family. Yes, that's the que van a decir la gente. Showing vulnerabilities is stigmatized. Yes. It's hard to find someone relatable and understanding. Yes, cultural awareness. We talked a lot about that in the last workshop. And the mindset of I can only depend on myself. We're going to talk a little bit about that. And time management. Yeah. Fear of being judged. Finding a therapist that understands my culture. Yes, cultural humility is so important. So these are all very valid barriers, and we're going to get into some of them, but you guys actually went above and beyond what we're going to talk about. But we want to recognize as we move forward, and Gustavo will talk a lot about this, there are also very much strengths, right, that we're going to pull from. But let's talk a little bit more about those barriers. So we discussed this in the last workshop as well, but we wanted to make sure that we reiterated. This is what some of the barriers can look like for, and we can go to the next slide. For us within our culture, and then we can talk about what some barriers look like as students as well. So first, within our culture and our values, we see a lot of this pride, the sense of pride, right? And one of you mentioned the que van a decir la gente. We're very closed off when it comes to not sharing our dirty laundry, quote unquote, not telling others how we're feeling. I think someone else mentioned like resolving things on our own instead of going outside of the family. That's where familismo comes from. So if you guys haven't heard the concept familismo, is basically it emphasizes family loyalty and interconnectedness. But the concern with this is that it involves only taking family's advice when it comes to important decisions. And yes, family is a huge strength. Gustavo's going to talk about that. But just like Sana says, sometimes it's not enough. Sometimes we do need that extra support. So it could be a barrier as well. Then there are also strong ties within our culture to religion and faith, which is why you may hear the, you know, you only need God or you only need to go to church to get your mental health support. But again, that can be a limitation because sometimes we need a lot more than that. Religion is actually a huge complement to services like therapy. And like I mentioned, there is a huge barrier when it comes to affordability and accessibility within our community specifically. And there's a huge language barrier. There's not enough therapists that are out there that understand our culture and that speak our language. So those are definitely barriers that we want to address. Now, in the next slide, we'll talk about what does this look like specifically for you guys, those of you that are students. So there's separate barriers that pertain to you all. There's a huge, immense pressure. Some of us are first gens, right? Are the first to go to college, are the trailblazers of the family that have to succeed. But there's also a lot of family expectations with that. Going back to the familismo piece, some of us can have to be our family translators or our family support. Some of us assist with taking care of our siblings or our caretakers, maybe for our parents or our grandparents. And there's a lot. I think someone put in the word cloud before of there's not a lot of time, right? There's not enough time because we have so many other commitments. And I think what schools are not doing enough to realize is that as students, you guys have separate lives, right? There's intersectionality of identities that make up who you are, and it's not just being a student. So there are a lot of barriers when it comes to not just our culture, but just being a student when it comes to getting that mental health support that we need. But like I mentioned, we don't want to just talk about the barriers or limitations. There's so many strengths that also come from our culture, and that's what Gustavo was going to talk about.
Right. So similar to what we just did in terms of the barriers or limitations. So we want to hear about your strengths. What do you think are some strengths and what would this look like for you when it comes to mental health in our community? So again, it's the same link. So if you're already like logged in and whatnot, you can just use the same link and I'm putting it again on the chat, but we'd love to hear what does this look like as a strength? So community, right? Yeah. So being together or finding, community around other folks. Resilience. So unfortunately, we've had to go through some things, but you've been able to bounce back and you learn some things from that. And so you build some tough skin in a sorts, right? So understanding maybe of different things or different perspectives, adaptability. Any others? What are some strengths when it comes to mental health in our community? Connection, absolutely, yeah. Strength of family closeness and cheerfulness, nature, depending, right, on how, right, we're very proud of our cultura and like who we are, absolutely. So these are all great examples of that. So thanks for participating. And to be honest, you took some right out of our presentation, right? So here are some strengths, right? So although, some of these can be seen as barriers. We can use them as strengths and take a new perspective when we approach mental health, right? So we've talked about familismo and so how that can be loyalty to family, but it's also a good way to build strong networks of support, right? So I have this graphic here, right? So as you think about yourself in the center and who you're connecting to, right? So you kind of connecting to other students, other mentors in your life. So that's a good way to do that. And you can also have your chosen family, right? So when you talk about familismo, it's not just about your family, your mom, dad, etc., parents or siblings, blood relatives in a sense, but also your chosen family, especially for those that may not be able to connect or have a traditional family in that sense. In terms of bilingualism, right? It's been shown that there's social and cognitive development as you kind of navigate two worlds. And even for those that don't speak the language or may speak it in some sort of ways or know some words, right? You're still benefiting from that. You're still able to kind of navigate those worlds, or kind of your brain has had to kind of adapt to those things. So that's a good way that shows being able to navigate that. In terms of religion, right? So Sada talked a little bit about this, but the practices can provide you with some skills that may improve your mental health. Think about meditation and reflection, right? As you pray. So all of those things are ways that are some strengths when it comes to mental health. For personalismo, right? This is with cultural beliefs or wisdom and adapting to a new culture, right? So this is how you have relationships in the cultural beliefs and how you're adapting. For example, like we have dichos, we also have confianza and conciencia, which would be cultivating personal awareness. So you're more aware about yourself and who you are. So it's important to be self-aware and to set your own boundaries, especially when we talk about family and when we talk about mental health. So what does this look like for students, right? So there's this model when it comes to talking to about Latino students, Hispanic students, in that our culture has wealth in reality, right? So a lot of times when we talk about the Latino community, right, we talk about it from a deficit perspective, in that there's a lot of barriers and we're not doing good. But in reality, we have a lot of things going for us, right? So these are the types of capital within this model, but there's aspirational capital in that we have hopes and dreams, right? So think about, yes, we have a lot of pressure to kind of do bigger and greater things, but a lot of those things also keep us moving forward, right? So think about that. We talked about bilingualism, right? So linguistic capital, and that turns into intellectual and social skills. So things that you can use in your day-to-day in college, and then obviously for your mental health, and being aware, again, culturally aware for others. Familial capital, right? Again, creating networks and community. Some of you definitely mentioned community and how that's been helpful. And even hand in hand with social capital, that you're developing mutual interests with others, figuring out what what a relationship is beneficial. Navigational capital, so you're able to maneuver through institutions in different situations, right? As not as compared to others in our groups. And then resistant capital, so challenging and inequality, so being able to kind of challenge things that may not be going for us, or when things get tough, we're able to challenge that. So as we think about our cultural wealth, right, it's important that we invest your wealth in your health, right? So switching that out, right, the first graphic where it says health is wealth. Now, how does that wealth look like for the health, right? So think about the different dimensions that go into well-being. This graphic has 8. There's other graphics or models that have 9 or 10. But as you think about your intellectual, right, going to school, just being thinking and kind of forward or intellectualism, how you're feeling, spirituality, whether it's a religion or not, environmental. So how do we connect to, the outside world? Financial. So a lot of you talked about the financial barriers and whatnot. So that's something to think about there. Occupational, obviously, right? So as you're part of SHPE and other things, how that could look like for your health. Social, we talked about connecting to others, and even the physical, obviously, the biggest that we think about and making sure that we are taking care of our bodies there. So that's how the strengths and barriers look like. So now we'd love to have a discussion about how does this look like for you. And so we're going to pause the recording here. And then we'd like.
Awesome. So we've kind of talked a little bit about this, but why is this important, especially for those students out there? And professionals, I think this is also something you still want to pay attention to. And I want to preface this by saying that this is not to scare you. This is the awareness piece that we need to know about, because especially if mental health was ever important before, it's definitely important for us to take care of now. So we know that the top 3 mental health disorders or challenges for students right now are anxiety, depression, and substance use disorders. The third one can fluctuate sometimes, but definitely anxiety and depression are the top 2 disorders that we're seeing with students. some things to note that for Latinx or Latinx students, experiences of stress occur at a much higher rate than non-Latinx college students in the US. And that's because a lot of the stigma and a lot of the challenges that we talked about before that are mostly present for first gen and for Latinx students. And overall, our students, our community members are less likely to obtain support because of the stigma, because of these barriers that we've been talking about. And I'm sure now more recent research will show a little bit differently the statistics, but in the 2020-2021 school year, it was found that more than 60% of college students were meeting a criteria for at least one mental health condition. So this is something that one is to show you guys that you're not alone. We're all going through this as students and as professionals, and we're all deserving of getting the support that we need in order to thrive. I think we need to get out of the survival mode and figure out what is it that we need to do to thrive. And like I said, this is meant for educational purposes and to build awareness. This is not to scare you guys. This is to show you how important it is for us to be taking care of ourselves now more than ever. Now, in the next slide, Gustavo will talk a little bit more about what does that self-care look like for you.
So some of this, we've talked about it before in other sessions, and we were kind of talking about this, right, in the breakout group, about how do you take care of yourself. So someone brought up setting and following healthy routines, and I'll make sure to say healthy routines, right, because there we can get into unhealthy routines or routines that are not helpful for us, right? Sometimes, again, especially as a student, we can go into the mentality of having to stay up to complete work or to study or other things. And so ensuring that we are creating those healthy habits, especially if you're a student that went straight through from high school to college, or, from college to grad school and then transition obviously into the workforce, that some of those habits that or routines that we set up during college actually follow us throughout life. So again, making sure that you're setting yourself up for success later in life now. And we talked about finding your community, your family, whatever that means, your chosen family, whatever that means to you. So a support system. One of you brought up, right? One having like people that you go to for certain things. I had to learn the hard way that you don't go tell mom everything, but that you may need to go talk to a friend or dad on the other side or something like that. But also that in that different people have different perspectives, and so finding that support system. Unplugging, whether that's to again not having any electronics, or something I'm trying out right now. It's just I haven't deleted my Instagram profile completely, but I've deleted the app from my phone. So that's been an interesting shift. Like it's not on my phone, but it doesn't. That way I don't doom scroll at 10, and then 10 turns into midnight, and then I don't get any sleep for the next day. So that's something that I've done for myself. Setting boundaries. So knowing, and first you have to also reflect what those boundaries and limitations look like. Some things are out of your wheelhouse or that you don't have expertise on, or that you don't feel comfortable with, depending on the situation. But at the same time, that part of it means learning how to say no. You don't have to, scream no and tell them like, no, I can't do this and be rude about it. But gently saying, no, unfortunately, I can't do this. So that's setting up no, both as a student, for yourself. Sometimes you have to say no to yourself, but also, I see some professionals nodding their heads as well. Asking and accepting help and support. Has been, for many of us, and especially I know I can resonate that this is one of the most difficult things to do, especially if you're a helping professional. And then within our culture, again, it is, we're people that we tend to not ask for help or for support when we need it. But that's something that we have to do to do for self-care. Gratitude and reflection, we've talked about how that kind of go hand in hand with religion if you're religious, but practicing those things can definitely help us. And again, obviously, taking time to yourself. So again, to just not study or to take breaks. We talked about that. How may that look like earlier in the presentation, but that may look like setting up a timer system, right? I think there's one way of, it's called the Pomodoro method. Like you study for 45 minutes, you take 15-minute breaks, and then you keep doing that until you kind of are done studying with the topic. Or again, setting up a block of study time and then allowing yourself to just enjoy your Saturday or enjoy your Sunday, however that may look like.
And this is what we want you guys to really start to reflect on now as you move forward and after this workshop. When we talk about when sana sana is not enough, right? There could be a period of time, right? Our mental health sometimes could be like a roller coaster. It has its ups and downs. But I think what's most important is for us to start reflecting on the fact that we know ourselves better than anybody else. And we know our bodies. So these are some things that we want you to look out for, right? When you start to think that maybe it's come to the point where sana sana is not enough. So you want to notice if there are any changes in your body or in your thoughts. And this is geared towards students, but this is important for professionals as well. Maybe you feel like you can't talk to your family or friends about what you're experiencing. Maybe you can't get out of bed to go to class or to get to work. Maybe you're missing deadlines or your attendance is lower than normal. Maybe you find yourself that you're not eating enough or that you're overeating or forgetting to eat or forgetting to do certain things. Maybe you're over engaging in things that are fun or more like self-medicating to deal with what you are experiencing. And especially if you feel suicidal or have thoughts of self-harm, these are all moments that it's important to start reflecting on, okay, when do I need to, when is sana sana not enough? And when is it that I need to go and get the support of a professional that can help me through this? So these are all things that we want you guys to start reflecting on and knowing what is kind of a norm or a baseline for you. And then when it starts to cross over into your body or your mind going through some very intense changes. And this is when you want to realize that, okay, it might take, you might need to take the next step to getting that professional support. So let's get into what does that support look like? What are some resources? And we've been sharing these. These are all resources that are really important. I do want to start by saying that if you are a student, you have access, hopefully every campus will have access to CAPS or a counseling center. There is a caveat. I will tell you that I know that a lot of them have wait lists for students, but it is at no cost. It's part of your tuition, and they can get you connected to long-term support as well. So it might be an easy and quick place to go to, especially if you're a student, but also recognize that there might be a wait list or might be some time before you see someone. Obviously, if you need support immediately, you will go to the hospital, you will call 911. If you do want to get connected to long-term support, these are some amazing places that you can go to. And Gustavo, if you can you link some of these websites? So there's Therapy for Latinx and Latinx Therapy. These are directories, right? A lot of these are directories where you can go and find a therapist that is bilingual and that is culturally responsive. Again, there is a caveat that there might be a wait for some of these, but there are a good place to find bilingual and culturally supportive therapists. There's Latinx Practice Collective. Psychology Today is also a good resource. They offer filters, so you can filter out the gender of the therapist, the location, what insurance they take, if they're in person or telehealth. So you can really try to find one that's mostly catered to your needs. Or you can also call your insurance company directly if you are going through insurance. You can tell them specifically, I want someone that's in network, that is in person or virtual, and someone that's taking on new clients. They should be able to direct you to someone for you to make that first call. If you don't have access to insurance, There are a lot of self-pay options or sliding scale options that they go based off of your income. I believe Psychology Today has that option to click self-pay. If not, you can also do a Google search, and a lot of them will come up for you in the area because those therapists will have that on their website. So those are some quicker ways to get connected to support.
These are some other national resources. So there's the JED Foundation. I'll give you what the website looks like in the next one, as well as our mental health screening on Mental Health America. So Mental Health America, the Trevor Project is specifically for the LGBTQ community. There's also the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. So we now have, similar to 911, where you call for physical and other emergencies, you can call 988 and be connected to a clinician in your area. So it'll actually route to someone that's close to your city or your town, depending where you're calling from. Or you'll get kind of rerouted to in a different way. You can also call if you're a veteran or know of veterans, the Veteran Crisis Line, the Disaster Distress Helpline. So that Disaster Distress Helpline is helpful if you're experiencing distress in any type of disaster, right? So for example, in Houston, we experience a lot of hurricanes. So let's say that I'm experiencing distress because of that hurricane or during that hurricane, you can always call them at that time. The Substance Abuse and Mental Health Service Administration, as well as the CDC, offer some resources. And then we also have the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. And so all of these have different types of information. We wanted to present these as reputable information, right? There's just a lot of things going out there. I'm sure you have all seen also as well different people online on TikTok and Twitter, and as well as or X, right? Or Instagram, right, with different accounts and whatnot. But these are some reputable organizations that have a lot of information on here. So this is what we were talking about, the Mental Health Resource Center at the JED Foundation. So the JED Foundation has a lot of blog posts that are easily like digestible information, right? You're not reading what's it called, like white papers or like research papers on mental health. You're actually just getting the information kind of in a presentable way. You can also take a mental health test. It's not necessarily a test, it's more of what we would call a screening, and it's not a true clinical screening, but this is what it looks like. And so you go on here, and this is a good way to like test the temperature. You input the information, and it'll tell you currently you're not experiencing depression, but you may want to talk to someone or things like that. And then down here below, that's from the Trevor Project. So again, the Trevor Project is more specifically for the LGBTQ, but it may be helpful for you or for others. So that's all the information that we have. So now we'll open it up to for Q&A, and we wanted to thank you as well for being here. This is our contact information, and I'll leave this slide up. Susan in the chat also said that there will be a survey for this event when you close down the Zoom. So make sure that you take that and give us some feedback. But we'll give you time for Q&A, and we'll stay on past the hour too. So any questions, comments, or thoughts?
Thank you guys all for being here and for showing up for yourselves. Also, we almost forgot, we have a self-care calendar for you guys for the month of May. So we'll drop that in the chat so that you guys have it. And it's basically one action item that you can do each day in the month of May. Please feel free to take it on past May. This is Mental Health Awareness Month is amazing, but it should be every month. So that's going to give you one action item that you can work on each day for the month of May to improve your self-care. So thank you guys for being here and for showing up for yourselves.
Thank you both. Thank you, Gustavo and Sarah. And if people have questions, please interrupt me, but I just want to take a moment and acknowledge all the hard work and effort and passion that you all have put into this project. We have another event, one more in this series that will be happening in the fall. And I also just want to thank our Honeywell team so much for doing this. We couldn't have done this without you. And it's clear for me today that there are really important conversations to be had. And I'm just so grateful for everyone who was willing to open up and be vulnerable and share. I think it's so important for all of us. And so thank you for your bravery and your willingness to open up. And I can't wait for the next session to dig into this deeper. I will send out a copy of the recording. I will send out a copy of all the resources that were in the chat. But we definitely do want your feedback so we can plan for our final event in this series. So thank you all.
Susan, I echo that. We are so proud of this partnership, and these sessions have been amazing. The resources shared, the vulnerability of people who have been sharing. It's a safe space. It's a great environment. Thank you so much for putting it together. This has been a really amazing project, I should say, that I've been invited to participate in and lead with you and my fellow Honeywell team. So I'm just over the moon, stoked, super proud. So thank you all.
Thank you, Shirley.
I wanted to take a moment to talk about the question that Lisette put in the chat. I will try to be concise because this is actually one of my favorite topics to talk about. But I think one is recognizing that imposter syndrome is not an us problem. It's a they problem. And also, it's not how do we overcome imposter syndrome, is how do we learn how to manage it. So unfortunately, imposter syndrome is going to come up in many different ways. We can learn how to overcome one instance, one moment of imposter syndrome, but because we have no control over society and how other people will contribute to that, it is important for us to learn how it comes up for us, how it shows up, what those triggers look like, and what we start to say to ourselves when that imposter syndrome creeps up, so that we can learn to combat it with the facts, right? I will share an example. As a first-gen college student, I kept telling myself, I'm not meant to be here. I'm not smart enough. No one else in my family did this. That was all imposter syndrome. So I had to learn how to tell myself that I am meant to be here. I was accepted into the school. I am going to be the first. I am the trailblazer. So I had to keep giving myself the facts. But I can tell you that imposter syndrome has never come up since then. So I think when we shift the perspective from overcoming to managing, it takes a lot of the pressure off of us. So I wanted to leave you with that. And also the fact that imposter syndrome was never even, or hasn't really been researched for people of color. So that shows that there is a lot more work that needs to be done in understanding what imposter syndrome even means and how that looks like for people in our community. I will stop there because, like I said, I'm very passionate about that topic, but I did want to leave you with, don't feel like you have to overcome it, but we can learn how to manage it. And I don't know, Gustavo, if you want to add anything else to that.
I put it in the chat, but that you're not alone, so that everyone experiences imposter syndrome in one way or the other at different phases and stages of your life. So, as a student, professionally, in personal life. So, know that it's not something that you're doing it alone. So, hopefully, you can also connect with others and to just talk about it and kind of make sure to name what's happening. That's definitely a helpful way.
And thank you, Lucia, for sharing that video. Any other questions before we wrap up?
I actually do have a question for
Yeah.
anyone, any of like the professionals. How would you guys deal with like advocating for yourself at like such a young age? I always struggle with that, like just saying how I feel and like actually having to tell adults about it is always kind of a struggle.
How you want to take them? I have some input as well.
No, I'll actually open it up to our other SHPE professionals in the room here. I would love to hear from you on how you would think about it from the SHPE perspective.
I'm not gonna defer. I'm happy to answer it, but I also would love to, when I think about who our professionals are too, our Honeywell partners, if there's anybody
Right.
that would like to join in that you've been working in the field. And I know we've had lots of conversations about this. It's a great question, Veronica, about how ERGs and different resources at companies can help with this. So I'll say that and let other people chime in, but I also know I have some other wonderful SHPE professionals who probably have some other ideas too, but love to hear from Honeywell on this.
I'll revert back to my answer, but I'll let yeah, Shirley, if you'd like to speak.
Yes, no, maybe. I I seriously haven't struggled with this. I'm very communicative and um I I I don't know that I necessarily have a great answer for it, but there is, to Susan's point, great resources. I lead the Hispanic Latin network here in the Atlanta side for Honeywell. And it's a great resource to have because we do get together every 2 weeks. We have meetings. We talk about what we're doing with community, but also we talk about, hey, how are we all doing? How are we feeling? Who got promoted? Let's celebrate. Who needs help? Let's brainstorm together. What's the situation? And we find ways to support each other, right? Um, Again, I don't think I've ever experienced that. I've always been able to speak my mind. I've always been able to communicate with my teams clearly, and my managers have been amazing too in letting me run with things and not necessarily have to check back in with them. It's a great working environment here. I haven't experienced that, but maybe I'll let SHPE professionals that might have that point of view that can answer to it.
I just threw some comments in the chat. If people are a place where you can't read the chat, I'll send those too. I would just say find a mentor within your company, wherever you can find that mentorship. Offers virtual mentoring if you need that. But find a company that offers mentoring in that kind of space. Also find mentors outside of your company as well, so you can kind of have some of that privacy piece. But as you're looking at companies, look at their culture, ask the questions, what kinds of resources, what kinds of support, what programs are available for employees to engage and connect with each other for personal fulfillment, for career development, how is that private? Like how does that get back to my manager? Like what are those setups? And like look for a company culture that really fits what your needs are. Yeah, Sarah put some good stuff in there too. And Ruben, I know you've been having lots of conversations with our interns about some of this too. So if you have any other thoughts, feel free to jump in.
I can share my personal experience that because I found this like greatly, it was cultural difference for me growing up in my culture. First of all, whatever you did, I feel like it was never enough. And you just basically did your job. And then the other thing was that like in my culture, even if you do a great job, you always like try to stay very humble and say, no, like I didn't do anything, like it was just nothing. And then when I moved to US, I found that it was very different and it was very hard for me. I struggled a lot, especially at the beginning, even going to the interviews, because you have to talk about yourself. And I was so uncomfortable talking about myself and my achievements. And so I just like, I think little by little, I try to just in every situation remind myself, I would say even to this day, still like uncomfortable, but it just got better over time. Telling myself that what it mattered was my efforts. And even in the situations that I didn't get the results that I would thought so, but I still made a lot of effort. So um, and also like people could also have different perspective about our efforts. Maybe something that maybe my efforts might look like different for me than what other people think about it. So that's also another thing. And I just try to remind all of these because just the way that I think the the systems are set up, we are getting compared also to other people, which basically, I mean, from one point of view, I can say maybe it's kind of inevitable because we are gonna get rank among other people, but it's so complicated because as human beings we are very complex, and no one measures our feeling and emotions and stresses when they do those rankings. So it's more focused on the business sides. And so that's why I think I personally try to also share how I felt when I went through those exercises. If I did something that was like out of my comfort zone, I say straightforward to my manager that no, I did feel uncomfortable. It was out of my comfort zone and I still did it, even though I might not get the results that, I should. But, I think the important thing was that I did it. So, no, it wasn't easy, but I think over time, just exercising all of these might help. I don't know.
That was great. Thank you for sharing that. It was very well said.
Sure.
We put a lot of feedback also in the chat. That's really important. Thank you guys for sharing that and for contributing to this conversation. We really hope that it opened the doors, hopefully, for you all to start having more of these conversations, for recognizing that you deserve the support and the help now more than ever. And like Gustavo said, we had our contact information up there if you guys ever need to chat. If you ever need support, I would be more than happy to help you guys get connected to a professional or anything like that. So please feel free to reach out, and thank you guys for your time.
Thank you again for
Thank
everyone.
you.
And if you're not subscribed to Shift Nation, our weekly newsletter, I will provide that in the recording link too. I encourage you to do that so you get the notifications about the next event coming up next fall. Thanks again, everyone. I hope you have a great day.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good evening.